Under the cold, sterile light of dawn, the true warning sign of Orion Apex Solutions' downfall didn't come from scandal or sabotage. It began with a quiet, prejudiced judgment. On that fateful morning, Naomi Sinclair, the formidable CEO of Sinclair Dynamics, stepped into the towering lobby of Orion Tower with composed elegance. Draped in a finely tailored charcoal cashmere coat, she arrived without an entourage. Her hair was neatly tied back, her jewelry minimal. Her very presence radiated assurance, a calm certainty born not from needing to prove her worth, but from knowing it was self-evident. But to Brittany Walsh, the young receptionist at Orion Apex, Naomi didn't look like power. She didn't look like a CEO. All Brittany saw was a black woman, modestly dressed, walking alone through the security gate. Without even glancing away from her screen, Brittany muttered, "Can I help you?" Her tone wasn't curious. It was guarded, dismissive. Naomi paused, nodded gently, and replied, "Good morning. I have an appointment with Mr. Granger at 9 o'clock for a strategic partnership discussion. I'm Naomi Sinclair from Sinclair Dynamics." She held out her premium ID card, her eyes calm, steady. But Brittany barely glanced at it. She tapped at her keyboard, her gaze laced with quiet skepticism. "Nobody told me about a Naomi Sinclair," she replied, her voice dripping doubt. Naomi, undeterred, remained composed. "The meeting was confirmed yesterday afternoon. Would you mind checking again?" Brittany stood up slowly, sighed dramatically like someone burdened with dealing with the unreasonable. "If you're here for deliveries, the service entrance is around the back," she said, loudly enough to catch the attention of a few bystanders. "This entrance is for clients and executives only." A heavy silence followed, but inside Naomi, a sharper clarity crystallized. Not out of offense, but recognition. This wasn't personal. It was systemic. Naomi blinked once, her voice measured and even. "I'm not here for deliveries. I'm the CEO of Sinclair Dynamics, and I'm here for a scheduled strategic partnership meeting." Brittany stared back, unfazed. "Then I'm calling security," she declared, reaching for the phone. Seconds later, 2 security guards appeared, as if summoned by the force of Brittany's disdain alone. They didn't ask questions, they didn't request ID. They simply moved in. Naomi didn't flinch. She stood tall, unwavering, her gaze forward, knowing that silence in this moment was its own statement. As they neared, Naomi spoke with low, firm authority. "I suggest verifying with Mr. Granger before you remove me from the building." But Brittany had already waved them forward. "This woman is causing a scene," she lied effortlessly. "Take her out." And so Naomi was escorted out, her arms held not violently but firmly, as if restraint itself were a form of ownership. She didn't protest. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she lifted her chin and looked up at the soaring marble ceiling, a symbol of grandeur and dominance now stripped bare in her eyes. From the executive elevator, Ethan Caldwell, Orion Apex vice president, stepped out and froze. His sharp eyes locked on Naomi's figure. He recognized her instantly, but he said nothing. Just a slight nod to Brittany, a silent approval. "Proceed." Above, on the mezzanine, Camille Harris, one of Orion Apex's few black senior managers, stood frozen. She recognized Naomi instantly. Her heart pounded, fingers clutching the cold steel railing. She wanted to intervene, to speak, to scream, but her legs wouldn't obey. Her silence wasn't cowardice. It was the conditioned reflex of survival in a place where voices like hers were rarely safe. Naomi was led through the revolving glass doors and onto the sidewalk. She paused, took a deep breath, the crisp morning air a contrast to the suffocating bias inside. She glanced back at the building, not with fury, but with chilling clarity. Pulling out her phone, she pressed a single button and said 3 words, "Initiate Plan B." A storm had been triggered. in Orion Apex Solutions, through one receptionist's bias, a vice president's smirk, and a silence rooted in fear, had just sealed its fate. Morning sunlight filtered through Orion Tower's vaulted glass ceiling, casting shifting patterns across its marble floor. Once a symbol of dominance, it now looked hollow, an empty shell of significance. From across the street, Naomi stood in stillness, eyes sharp, posture unwavering. There was no rush in her movement, only purpose. Her face betrayed no emotion, but every fiber of her presence was clarity. This wasn't about personal offense. It was revelation. Naomi understood something vital. A potential partner's true worth isn't shown in how they treat the powerful, but in how they treat the unknown. She adjusted the sleeve of her cashmere coat. No brand names, no ostentation, just quiet authority. Anyone observant would know this woman didn't come to impress. She came because she already had power. As Naomi returned to the building, Brittany, oblivious, hunched over her phone at the reception desk. The lobby buzzed with its usual rhythm, and yet, Naomi, one step at a time, walked back into the place that had tried to diminish her, now holding a deeper power than any security badge could confer. When Brittany finally looked up and saw Naomi, her entire demeanor shifted in a heartbeat. The feigned friendliness vanished, replaced with guarded arrogance. Naomi, poised as always, approached with steady calm. Every step measured, every breath deliberate. The contrast in treatment wasn't just visible. It was searing, a scar pressed into memory. Brittany didn't even lift her head. Her fingers continued scrolling through her phone as if Naomi were invisible, just part of the background noise. Naomi stood still, silent, then slowly counted to 3 before speaking, in a clear, composed voice. "Good morning. I have an appointment with Mr. Thomas Granger at 9 a.m. Would you mind confirming that for me?" At last, Brittany looked up. Her icy blue eyes scanned Naomi from head to toe, a sweeping gaze with no effort to hide her contempt. "Name?" she asked, her tone sharp as glass. "Naomi Sinclair," Naomi replied calmly. A tense silence hung between them. Brittany raised an eyebrow, then let out a loud, derisive laugh that echoed just enough to draw attention from those nearby. "Deliveries go around the back," she said, her lips curling into a smile. "People like you always come to the wrong entrance." Naomi inhaled gently. It wasn't surprise. She had seen this before, but the familiarity didn't make it sting any less. Still, her voice remained calm, firm, and respectful. "I'm not here to make a delivery. I'm here for a strategic meeting between Sinclair Dynamics and Orion Apex Solutions. Would you kindly double-check the schedule?" Brittany tapped at her keyboard without even glancing at the screen. Each key press lacked purpose, devoid of sincerity. "There's no Naomi Sinclair here. You must have the wrong address," she said, her voice colder than the air-conditioned lobby. Naomi's jaw clenched slightly, barely noticeable, but her patience didn't waver. "Would you mind checking again, please?" Before Naomi could finish the sentence, Brittany suddenly leaned over the desk and grabbed her sleeve. "I told you already," she snarled, tightening her grip. "You don't have an appointment. Leave now, or I'm calling security." Naomi looked down at the hand clinging to her coat. Then, slowly, deliberately, she lifted her gaze, locking eyes with Brittany. Her voice, soft yet loaded with unshakable authority, cut through the tension. "Remove your hand from me." Brittany froze. For a moment, a flicker. Naomi's stare unsettled her. She let go but quickly raised her voice. "Security, we have a situation at the front desk." The atmosphere cracked. 2 guards rushed in, faster than before. They didn't ask for context or ID. Naomi didn't resist. Her back stayed straight, her eyes forward. She walked as though she weren't being removed, but rather choosing to leave. Just then, the executive elevator doors opened. Ethan Caldwell stepped out once more. He froze at the sight of Naomi being escorted. He knew exactly who she was. He had read her file, sat in early pitch meetings. But this time his smile was more deliberate, calculated. Arms crossed, he stood silently. Upstairs on the mezzanine, Camille Harris clung to the railing, her throat tight. She recognized Naomi instantly. In Naomi she saw everything she admired. Grace, strength, dignity, the very qualities she'd once tried to preserve within herself. But at that moment, she couldn't move. Her silence thundered in her ears, louder than any scream. Naomi was pushed through the revolving glass doors. She paused for a moment on the sidewalk, her eyes drifting to the gleaming Orion Apex logo overhead. A slow, cold smile crept across her lips. She pulled out her phone, pressed a single button, and spoke with serene finality. "Initiate Plan B." Each word fell like a solemn vow. Across the city, Sinclair Dynamics executives received confidential directives. Within hours, internal emails were pulled, meetings canceled, confidential documents recalled. The partnership with Orion Apex wasn't postponed. It was obliterated. Inside, Brittany returned to her desk with the self-satisfied air of someone convinced they had protected their company's prestige. She adjusted her designer blazer, took a slow sip of latte, and leaned toward a young colleague, whispering with smug pride, "People like that always think they're more important than they really are, never know their place." The young man gave a nervous chuckle, eyes darting toward the glass doors Naomi had just disappeared through. Something felt off in his gut, but Brittany didn't notice or didn't care. To her, power wasn't just held by executives. It belonged to anyone who could deny entry, even from behind a front desk. Down the hall, Ethan Caldwell still stood with arms crossed, gaze locked on the entryway. He knew exactly who Naomi Sinclair was. He had once supported the idea of partnership, but deep down, he had never trusted a black woman to lead a tech empire. He never said it. He didn't have to. His demeanor said everything. Ethan Caldwell's discomfort was never loud. It was wrapped in polished words, hidden beneath concerns about cultural alignment and leadership chemistry. But watching Naomi humiliated in the lobby gave him the opening he needed, a chance to sabotage everything without ever lifting a hand. He walked slowly toward the reception desk, his demeanor casual, like someone who just happened to pass by. "What just happened here?" he asked, voice as light as a breeze. Brittany startled at the sight of the vice president standing right beside her. She quickly adjusted her blouse and flashed a smile that felt rehearsed. "Just a woman claiming to have a meeting with Mr. Granger, sir. I handled it." Ethan raised an eyebrow, feigning concern like a leader invested in protocol. "You're sure she wasn't someone important?" Brittany laughed confidently, as if the idea were ridiculous. "Absolutely. I've seen her type before. If she were anyone of value, she wouldn't show up looking like that." Ethan nodded slightly and gave her a patronizing pat on the shoulder. Possessive, dismissive. "Good call, Brittany. Keep that attitude. Orion needs people who protect its brand image." Brittany's smile widened, unaware that her unconscious arrogance, nurtured by prejudice and pride, had just been weaponized. Above them, Camille Harris remained still on the mezzanine hallway, gripping the railing until her knuckles turned white. Brittany's words echoed in her mind, each one slicing into the buried wounds Camille had quietly endured for years inside this very building. The doubtful looks, the condescension, the unspoken shortcuts that pushed her aside. And now she'd witnessed the same thing happen to Naomi Sinclair, a woman she had long admired from afar, a tech icon, a symbol of strength and brilliance, erased as if she were nothing. A colleague beside her leaned in and whispered, "Are you okay?" Camille forced a smile. I'm fine. But inside, she was unraveling. Outside, Naomi stepped into the black sedan waiting at the curb. Mia Park, her assistant, opened the door swiftly, her voice low and tense. Orion just called back. They want to reconfirm the meeting. Naomi looked out the window as the car merged into the morning traffic. Her voice was cold. Too late. No yelling, no explanation. A company that let someone like Brittany Walsh be the gatekeeper had said enough. Naomi didn't need to hear more. Behind her, Orion Tower still shimmered under the morning sun, completely unaware of the storm it had just triggered. Naomi's command had already begun moving through Sinclair's ranks like a silent alarm. Within 30 minutes, the legal and PR teams at Sinclair Dynamics had initiated a full-scale withdrawal from Orion Apex Solutions. No public statement, but the silence itself spoke louder than 1,000 press releases. At Sinclair headquarters, Naomi sat upright in her private office, fingers gliding across her tablet, carefully reviewing proposal files and internal reports from Orion. When Mia stepped in, Naomi didn't look up. "Naomi," Mia said breathlessly. "Mr. Granger's office called again. They said it's urgent." Naomi didn't shift. "Don't answer," she replied. "We're done." Mia hesitated. "They're asking why we're not responding." Naomi finally looked up, her eyes turning toward the wide window that framed the city skyline. "They're not worth an explanation." She gently tapped the edge of the tablet and turned to Mia. "Draft a statement within the hour. Sinclair Dynamics is officially withdrawing from all negotiations with Orion Apex Solutions effective immediately." Mia blinked, absorbing the gravity. "Understood," she whispered. "Are you sure about this?" Naomi gave the faintest smile, barely visible. "I've never been more certain." Then, with a voice weighted with clarity and conviction, she added, "A company that puts someone like Brittany on the front lines has already revealed who they are. This wasn't a personal insult. It was a cultural revelation." Mia nodded, her face serious. "I'll take care of it." Less than an hour later, the news began to leak. The tech industry reeled as word spread that Sinclair Dynamics had abruptly pulled out of a major deal. Stocks wavered. Rumors flared across business networks like dry grass to flame. At Orion Apex, the tremor was felt immediately. Phones rang non-stop. Analysts panicked. The comms team was in chaos. In the top-floor executive office, CEO Thomas Granger stared at his vibrating phone, pale and dazed. He picked up one call, then another, voices layering over each other, all demanding the same thing. What happened? Why did Sinclair back out? He stammered out for an emergency meeting. As the team filed into the sleek glass conference room, tension coiled in the air. Ethan Caldwell sat in the far corner, composed and enigmatic. Granger stood at the head of the table, his voice rough with strain. "Can anyone explain what the hell is happening? Why did Sinclair pull out overnight?" A junior director cleared his throat. "Sir, I heard this morning she stopped by. There was something in the lobby." Granger narrowed his eyes. "Something? What something?" Silence fell. Then someone whispered. It was the receptionist. "Brittany." She refused to admit Ms. Sinclair, even called security. Granger drained of color. "She was Naomi Sinclair, and she was escorted out of our building." No one replied. Granger turned to his assistant. "Check the visitor log immediately." She fumbled with her tablet. "Yes, sir, it shows 9A. Naomi Sinclair." The room froze in stunned stillness. Granger murmured to himself, voice low, "She was our last lifeline." Outside the boardroom, Orion Tower gleamed in the midday sun, but inside, its foundation was already cracking, and Naomi hadn't even raised her voice. Granger slammed his palm on the table. Who's responsible for this? No one spoke. Then a hesitant voice pierced the silence. It was Brittany Walsh, sir. She denied Ms. Sinclair entry and called security. Ms. Sinclair was escorted out. Each word fell like a lead weight. Granger's face collapsed. You mean, on the morning of our most important negotiation, the CEO of Sinclair was humiliated at our door, and no one intervened? Silence was the answer. Ethan Caldwell leaned slightly forward, his eyes cold as a mirror, watching the fallout with the satisfaction of a predator who'd waited for this moment. Meanwhile, on the lobby floor, Brittany was still chatting and laughing with a coworker, as though nothing had happened, her laughter bright, confident. Then the elevator doors opened. Thomas Granger emerged, his face a frozen mask of fury. His footsteps echoed across the polished stone like blows from a hammer. Conversations ceased. Employees held their breath. Brittany looked up, still smiling, until she met his gaze. "Brittany," Granger said, voice low and deadly sharp, "do you know what you've done?" She stood slowly, confusion pushing up her face. "Sir, I don't understand." "You don't understand," he hissed. "The woman you dismissed was Naomi Sinclair, CEO of Sinclair Dynamics, the one person who could have saved this company." Orion Tower's grand lobby fell into a deathly hush. Every shred of sound vanished. Brittany tried to speak, but nothing came out. Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the desk, as if searching for a foothold in a crumbling world. I didn't know. No one told me," she stammered. "You didn't need to be told," Granger snarled, eyes sharp as daggers. "Your job is to confirm appointments, not judge people by their appearance." He took a step forward. "You didn't even check the schedule, did you?" Brittany's eyes flickered toward Ethan Caldwell, as though seeking rescue from the powerful man she'd trusted. But Ethan just looked at her blankly and turned away. Cold, dismissive, she was utterly alone. Granger inhaled deeply, addressing the stunned crowd of employees frozen in silence. "Let this be perfectly clear to everyone," he announced. "Orion Apex is now in crisis. We have lost our most valuable strategic partner, and it all started right here." He turned back to Brittany, voice as frigid as ice. "You're fired. Pack your things. You have 30 minutes. The words struck her like a brutal blow to the chest. Her knees buckled, tears welled in her eyes. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing quietly amid the vast lobby. Colleagues who once laughed with her a moment ago avoided her gaze, turning away. None stepped forward. No one offered comfort. She had become radioactive, untouchable. In the shadowed corridor outside, Ethan Caldwell stood silently, witnessing it all like a conductor who had just orchestrated a final crescendo. He'd played his hand with chilling precision. Naomi's departure and Brittany's downfall had been manipulated from afar to benefit his ambition. But now, Granger was stripped bare before the company, and the Sinclair deal lay in ruins. But what Ethan didn't anticipate was how swift and profound the fallout would be. The damage wasn't just reputational. It penetrated the very structure of their empire, cracking its foundation. On the mezzanine, Camille Harris remained motionless. No smile, no tears, her heart shattered. She'd longed for justice, but this scene offered none. It was mere cosmetics. Brittany was only a symptom, not the disease. The real rot lay deeper, in the silent rooms where men like Ethan orchestrated everything. Camille watched Brittany crumble below. She felt neither pity nor vindication. Then her gaze shifted across the lobby, to Ethan, watching Granger like a patient predator, measuring time until his prey fell. A chill ran down her spine. In the black sedan, Naomi Sinclair reviewed a report sent by Mia Park. She scrolled silently, her face unreadable, eyes calculating. She nodded once, then pressed her phone. Prepare all legal and PR materials. Discrimination, defamation, it's time to bring this into the light. Her voice remained steady, decisive. This was no vengeance, it was judgment. Inside Orion Tower, as Brittany wiped away tears and Granger clung to the remnants of his authority, no one realized the real danger wasn't in the uproar. It was in the silence, the calm before the storm, because the collapse had already begun. Just days after Naomi walked away and Brittany was fired, the first cracks appeared. The blow came from the public. Secretly recorded videos, from grainy security footage to smartphone clips, spread online with lightning speed. Naomi being escorted out, Brittany's mocking tone, the receptionist who believed herself the gatekeeper. The response was like wildfire. Social media erupted with demands for accountability and investigations. News organizations pounced with headlines like "Major Tech Firm Accused of Racism" and "Sinclair Dynamics Withdraws from Orion Apex Deal." Stock prices plunged, investors panicked and sold off shares in droves. In under 72 hours, Orion Apex lost almost 25% of its market value. At the HR office, Janet Collins sat across from Brittany Walsh. The receptionist, who once held her head high, now looked hollow, her hands tightly clasped, her face shell-shocked. Janet slid a thick file toward her. "This is the board's decision. Your employment is terminated immediately." Brittany's voice cracked. "Jeanette, I didn't know who she was, I swear." "I never meant to offend anyone." Janet's expression remained steady. "It's not that you didn't know, Brittany. It's that you didn't care. You acted on appearance, not protocol," Janet continued, her voice calm but cold as steel. "And now Miss Naomi Sinclair has officially sued you personally for defamation and racial discrimination." Brittany went pale. She's suing me?" she murmured. "Yes," Janet replied without flinching. "This is no longer an internal issue at Orion Apex. You've been named personally." Those words shattered Brittany from the inside. She had once believed herself immune to consequences, that rejecting, judging, excluding others was an invisible privilege tied to her role. Now, her entire world had collapsed in less than a week. The name Brittany Walsh, once synonymous with professional excellence in the office, now stank of scandal and shame. Recruiters ghosted her. Friends quietly backed away. Former colleagues stopped returning her messages. Her inbox, once brimming with coffee invites and party RSVPs, now overflowed with hate mail, criticism, and condemnation. Every notification felt like a knife twisting in her gut. As Brittany's world cracked, a deeper undercurrent was rising upstairs. Ethan Caldwell, the real face beneath his polished veneer, remained coldly calculating, driven by ruthless ambition. He thought he'd won. With Thomas Granger stripped of his authority, Ethan believed the CEO chair was his for the taking. But he had underestimated the shadow he cast. None darker than his own. One morning, as Ethan prepared for a routine board update, a call came in from internal security. "Mr. Caldwell," the voice said evenly, "this is Richard Morris from internal security. We need to discuss some flagged activity on your personal email account." Ethan tensed but kept his voice measured. "Flagged? What do you mean?" "Yes, sir. We've detected multiple encrypted emails between your account and James Harper at Nexus Technologies outside approved internal systems. It appears confidential company files may have been shared." Silence hung heavy. A storm raged in Ethan's mind, but his face stayed calm. "There must be some mistake," he began. But he knew there was none. Several floors up, a board emergency meeting was already underway. Board chair Sylvia Boone held stacks of irrefutable evidence, emails, attachments, screenshots. Ethan wasn't just betraying Granger, he was delivering Orion Apex's most sensitive strategy to their top competitor. This isn't just internal betrayal, Sylvia declared firmly to the board. This is corporate espionage. The implications could be criminal. In his office, Ethan stood motionless, staring out at the city through the floor-to-ceiling glass. His fingers twitched against his desk, a game of chess gone horribly wrong. The pieces he once moved at will were now turned against him. Down in the lobby, Camille Harris watched from a distance, her gaze wary. She had seen this coming. Brittany's fall was merely the first wave. With Ethan exposed, the real rot was laid bare. Embedded deep in the marble and silence, hidden behind corporate politeness yet seething with contempt. Naomi Sinclair hadn't started the storm. She only pulled back the curtain. Now, with lawsuits filed, media scrutiny ignited, and legal teams circling, Orion Tower stood not as a beacon of success, but as a cautionary emblem for the industry. And the storm had only just begun. In the wake of scandal, legal action, and internal collapse, Orion Apex Solutions officially declared bankruptcy. Swift, ruthless, irreversible, the bright tower that symbolized power and prestige now stood abandoned, a monument to arrogance and decay. Employees filed out of the building, arms clutching boxes, their eyes heavy with grief and disbelief. Some cried, others muttered curses, but most were silent, haunted by a company culture they once believed unbreakable. Near the glass entrance, Camille Harris stood with her arms crossed, surveying the faces of former colleagues, some indifferent, some complicit, some oblivious. She had yearned for this day, not out of revenge, but because justice once felt like a distant hope. Yet when it came, relief eluded her. All she felt was emptiness. This collapse didn't just take down the leadership. It ruined the lives of hundreds, many of whom were innocent. Not far away, in a sunlit high-rise office, Naomi Sinclair reviewed the final legal filings. With a quiet nod, she signed them and passed the documents to her attorney. Laura, her assistant, spoke softly. "It's official. The court has confirmed Ethan Caldwell's federal charges. Brittany Walsh's appeal was denied." Naomi nodded calmly. "Let it stand." She paused, then turned to Laura. "We're not done yet." In another part of the city, Brittany Walsh huddled in a cramped apartment, curtains drawn to shut out the outside world. Her name, now synonymous with racism, corporate failure, and disgrace, echoed in every rejection letter, every hateful text, every silence. She had lost her job, her home, her reputation, and with a multi-million-dollar judgment looming, her future too. Then, one late afternoon, her phone rang. A voice spoke, cold and professional on the other end. "Hello, this is Marcus Hang, representing Miss Naomi Sinclair. I'm calling to inform you that the $2 million, 0 cents in damages has been converted into community service. You will serve a minimum of 18 months with organizations supporting minority communities. This decision is final and non-negotiable." Brittany whispered in disbelief. "Why would she do that?" The voice remained steady. "This isn't forgiveness. It's a chance for redemption." And so Brittany began anew at a small outreach center in Southridge. Day after day she listened to stories she once ignored, once dismissed as unworthy, people judged, rejected, marginalized, just like Naomi had been. Gradually, guilt gave way to reflection. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was the first glimmer of genuine understanding. Meanwhile, Naomi was orchestrating a grander transformation. Orion Tower, once the epicenter of a major technology discrimination scandal, had been quietly acquired by Sinclair Dynamics. When the announcement broke nationally, it stunned the industry. The building formerly defined by bias was now being reborn as the Carter Center for Innovation, with a renewed purpose. At the groundbreaking ceremony, Naomi stood alongside Camille. Two women, two generations, one shared vision. Naomi looked at Camille, her eyes brimming with resolve. "Camille, I want you to lead this. You'll be the CEO of the center. No one understands both technology and justice like you do." Camille was stunned. "You trust me?" Naomi offered a gentle, unwavering smile. "I always have." News of the appointment spread through the tech world like wildfire. A black woman who once remained silent in corridors of power now led a billion-dollar center on the very ground where she was once excluded. As the new CEO, Camille launched the center's inaugural initiative, a scholarship and accelerator program for underrepresented entrepreneurs and students. Every day she met young innovators, mentored startups, and forged partnerships rooted in inclusive progress. The mission was clear: dismantle the barriers Orion Apex once imposed and replace them with bridges of opportunity. Elsewhere, Thomas Granger faded from the spotlight. He sold his assets and moved to Oak Ridge Valley, a quiet town where no one asked about his past. His days were spent wandering through old barns and open fields. Each step weighted with the burdens he ignored, the voices he silenced. Naomi Sinclair watched these changes unfold not with satisfaction but with clarity. She didn't seek vengeance. She sought accountability and transformation. In a world where too many had been silenced or unseen, Naomi chose a different path, one where justice wasn't just punishment but progress. The Carter Center for Innovation now stood tall against the skyline of Centura City, its glass facade reflecting both the promise of technology and the gravity of history. Inside, the atmosphere was vibrant, purposeful, compassionate. Every corner of the former tower had been reimagined, from a monument of exclusion to a beacon of possibility. Camille Harris, as CEO, walked those halls not with hesitation but with vision. Young innovators from marginalized communities filled classrooms and labs, prototyping solutions, pitching ideas, learning leadership. The walls displayed quotes championing justice, resilience, and creativity. Above the main auditorium, engraved in brushed steel, "The future belongs to those who once were denied the door." One quiet afternoon, Naomi stood at the back of the auditorium, watching a group of high school students deliver their first tech challenge. Her heart swelled, but her posture remained calm, her presence understated. She never needed to speak loudly to be heard. Her phone buzzed. A policy update. The new Federal Inclusion and Transparency Act, inspired by the Naomi Sinclair incident, had just passed its final vote. Now corporate America was required to implement transparent hiring practices and conduct workplace bias audits. Change, once optional and slow, had become law. Meanwhile, Brittany Walsh continued her quiet service at South Ridge Outreach Center, coordinating full-time tech literacy programs. She kept her head down, declined interviews, and turned down every invitation to speak publicly. Redemption was no longer what she sought. It was what she lived, day by day. Ethan Caldwell's fall echoed much further. After serving his federal sentence, he was released into a world that no longer wanted him. Former allies vanished. His bank account was drained. Every opportunity evaporated under the weight of betrayal. He lived alone in a rented one-bedroom apartment, watching Camille Harris on television as she spoke at global innovation and equality conferences. His bitterness remained, a wound that refused to heal. Naomi Sinclair observed all of it, not with triumph, but with clarity. She never sought revenge. What she pursued was accountability and transformation. In a world where too many voices are silenced and lives forgotten, Naomi chose a different path, one where justice isn't about punishment, but progress. The Carter Center for Innovation now rises prominently in Centura City's skyline. Its glass exterior reflects both the promise of technology and the shadows of the past. Inside, it pulses with purpose, drive, and compassion. Every corner of this former tower has been reimagined, from a symbol of exclusion to the very heart of opportunity. Camille Harris, now CEO, walks these halls, no longer with hesitation, but with vision. Young innovators from underrepresented communities fill classrooms and labs, creating, pitching, learning leadership. The walls display quotes on justice, resilience, and creativity. Above the main auditorium, stainless steel letters declare, "The future belongs to those who were once denied the door." One quiet afternoon, Naomi stands at the back of the auditorium, watching high school students presenting their first tech challenge. Her heart is full, yet her posture remains serene. She's never needed to raise her voice to be heard. Her phone buzzes, an update from her public policy team. Inspired by the Sinclair incident, a new Federal Inclusion and Transparency Act has just passed its final vote. From now on, corporations are required to implement transparent hiring processes and conduct workplace bias audits. Change, once slow and optional, is now law. Far from the public eye, Brittany Walsh continues her final months of community service. She works full-time at Southridge Outreach Center, coordinating digital literacy programs for teens. She keeps her head down, declines interviews, and refuses any invitation to speak publicly. Redemption isn't something she dreams of anymore. It's something she practices every day. One late afternoon, while teaching a digital literacy class, a mother approaches Brittany and asks, "Why are you here doing all this?" Brittany doesn't have a scripted answer. She simply replies, "Because someone gave me a chance to understand." That simple response carries her whole journey, from arrogance to empathy, from judgment to action. Brittany, once standing at the top of a tower, now knows that true value lies not in position, but in choices made from the heart. Ethan Caldwell, meanwhile, watches silently as Camille appears on magazine covers. Naomi shapes policy, and the Carter Center becomes a model for socially conscious innovation. His name, if it appears at all, is relegated to a footnote in ethics seminars, a cautionary tale about unchecked ambition. Thomas Granger has disappeared from public view. He lives quietly in Oak Ridge Valley, rarely seen. He donates anonymously to social justice causes, having learned that some wounds are not meant to be healed, only remembered. In Centura City, Camille steps onto a small stage at the Carter Center's one-year anniversary, introducing Naomi to thunderous applause. Naomi takes the podium and pauses for effect. The room falls silent. "This place," she begins, "was once a gate built to keep people out. Today, it's a platform to lift them up." She surveys the hopeful, brilliant faces before her. Power is often mistaken for privilege, but true power is choosing compassion when you could stay silent, acting when you could walk away, lifting others up when they fall. Her words echo beyond the walls into history. To anyone ever overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, your dignity isn't given by title. Your value doesn't need validation. You are already enough, and when you rise, rise for those who aren't there yet. The audience springs to its feet in a standing ovation. Tears glisten on many faces. Naomi steps back, exchanging a knowing look with Camille, a quiet smile between two women who were once invisible in the rooms they now own. Outside, a young girl stands with her father, pointing up at the gleaming building. "Daddy, is that the place that changed everything?" she asks. He kneels beside her and smiles. "Yes, sweetheart. That's where people chose to become better." From the ashes of a collapsed empire, something more than a new organization was born. It was a new idea that business can be kind, leadership can be compassionate, and power can be graceful. The final lesson. For business and life, character is the foundation. One careless decision today can topple an empire tomorrow, but one act of conscience is all it takes to begin building it back.